Crossbeam's got network effects, which is so rare in B2B companies. Crossbeam gets better the more people that are on it, even if the software stays the same. If there's 5 people on Crossbeam, it's not a very good product, no matter how good the code is. If there's 5,000 people, it's a really good product. And if there's, we're going to probably cross 50,000 companies on it this year, it becomes like something that is incredibly transformational in terms of the impact it has.
Good morning and welcome back to the Channel Insight podcast. My name is Dinara. I'm the host of Channel Insights. And today I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined by Bob Moore, the CEO and co-founder of Crossbeam. Welcome to the show, Bob.
It's so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Bob, I've worked in the partner experience management for nearly 20 years now. And Crossbeam has absolutely been a luxury product for me. I always wanted to have Crossbeam, but I never had the chance to work with your platform. Tell me a little bit more about the original story. At what point did you decide that Crossbeam had to exist?
Yeah, so the dirty little secret about me and about the Crossbeam journey is that I am actually not a partnerships professional or a partnerships person by trade. I am a data nerd. I have a computer science degree, and I spent most of my career before Crossbeam working in the data analytics industry. And this is my third software company. The first two were very squarely in the universe of building dashboards and data infrastructure and kind of helping companies analyze their own data in a way that allowed them to make smarter decisions. And the Crossbeam problem actually showed up in the same way that it has shown up for you, which is I was working as an operator inside of these companies that I had started, and I kept running into these problems that were a very unique class of data analytics, because instead of analyzing my own data, I wanted to know what happened at the intersection of my data and the data of my partners. So these can be very simple questions, right? Stuff like, hey, partner, how many customers do we have in common, or who are they? Or do we have any companies that are in both of our sales pipelines at the same time right now? But the challenge was always that in order to answer those questions, you have to draw a Venn diagram between my data and my partner's data. And you get into this cold start kind of data standoff problem, because mathematically, you can't draw a Venn diagram and find out what's in the middle of two data sets unless you have all of the data from both of the data sets. And that means I need to give you my whole customer list, or you need to tell me your whole sales pipeline. And obviously that's a non-starter for a whole host of reasons in most companies. So you know this well, and everybody in the industry knows this well, as account mapping and the account mapping problem. And historically, people have solved it by emailing spreadsheets back and forth to each other. But that kind of amounts to playing battleship with your partners, and just, you end up oversharing, you end up missing things. The universe of false positives and false negatives that come out of the classic account mapping process is huge. Not to mention, you are almost always sharing more information than you necessarily need to, because in order to even ask if there might be an overlap, you need to divulge that you've got something going on with that account. So it's tricky. And lead registration kind of suffers from the same thing, right? Like you can kind of throw something over the wall and put it on the other party to match it, but then you have these same issues of lack of transparency and understanding of what happens after that fact, right? So the idea for Crossbeam was, what if we built something that solved this problem in a much better way? And you would need basically an independent third-party service that almost functions like an escrow service for data. So it's this secure, independent third-party platform. It can sit in between companies when they collaborate with each other and help answer these questions that live at the intersection of their data sets. So as long as both sides trust Crossbeam, Crossbeam can become this rules and governance engine to say, I'm never going to share any data across company lines that doesn't meet these extremely specific criteria, that it lives in my customer set and it lives in your sales pipeline under these really good conditions. So anyway, it started out as a data analytics problem. It's like, instead of analyzing my data, it was analyzing our data. And then how do we build the systems for that? And it just so happens that hands down, the best use case universally has been with partnership teams, channel teams, ISV and tech partner teams. And, we're 40,000 companies on the network now that are using it just for that purpose.
Absolutely. I mean, as a channel professional, for me, it's such an important platform which you're using. And I'm an advocate of your platform already. I understand what problem you wanted to solve with it. Could you please elaborate a little bit more on your why, on Crossbeam why? And also, I live in Europe, right? We have very, we have GDPR laws, for example, where partners and customers may not want to share the data. Sharing is caring, I get it, but do you have any pushbacks from data professionals?
Sure. So I'll answer your two parts in order there. So you started out asking about the why behind Crossbeam, and I'll just say this, which is, I talked a moment ago about the problem, and that's kind of the painkiller version of creating Crossbeam, right? And there's a pretty compelling why there, which is just to disintermediate this legacy account mapping process that's been so painful for so many people, and make it better, faster, stronger, richer data, et cetera. Very powerful. But there's also kind of it's not just a painkiller, it's a vitamin 2 effect, which is the real why for me is that I was very interested in unearthing for every company that uses Crossbeam a new data layer that it could use to run their business better. And it's one thing to be able to operate better within your partner ecosystem and find more deals and be more efficient and measure attribution better. That's all great. But there's also this other thing that happens, which especially in the AI era becomes incredibly important, which is once you have your ecosystem connected to Crossbeam and you're getting this fire hose of data from every partner about where your pipelines intersect, where your customer bases intersect, what prospects you might be going after at the same time, you end up, when you add all that data together, with this incredibly rich proprietary data asset, which is basically your company's own second party data. It's this network effects driven data asset that is so, so valuable, especially in the AI era, because there's so much data there that in a world where you've got a team of partner account managers that is probably overextended already, it's difficult to drink from the fire hose every morning of every single deal that changed state, every new partner overlap that exists, everything coming through. But with AI agents, you actually can do it. And you can convert this universe of data and everything that you can see in all of your partner CRMs into buying signals, into these indicators that qualify leads, these indicators that tell us that you should be pursuing accounts that you're not actively pursuing because of what your partners are doing with them. And that's not just valuable for partner teams. That's valuable for BDR and SDR teams and lead gen. It's valuable for marketers wanting to run ABM campaigns and personalized messaging. It's valuable for sales reps, even direct sales reps who are trying to win deals by identifying where there's buying activity and what the tech stacks look like and where there's kind of alignment on what's being purchased and why, and where there might be a need inside of all these companies that they might want to focus on. So you get this incredible side effect by virtue of the partner team's great work in building up all these connections. You get this side effect of this data asset that is like a rocket ship that takes you off of partner island and makes the influence of the partner universe actually relevant to the entire revenue and go-to-market organization. And that data asset becomes this really important lifeblood for AI agents and human operators alike, and RevOps and revenue teams. And that's a really big deal for partner teams and their own relevance and importance internally, especially in the AI era. And it's a big deal for the people consuming it. So that, like, the why for me has always been about data and creating this new data asset that never existed before for all the companies who use Crossbeam. So you asked about privacy and security. So here's the good news, which is we've been around for 8 years now, and we were actually started in the summer of 2018. GDPR rolled out in the spring of 2018. So we were one of the first companies to exist in the post-GDPR era. So we've been built up from day one in a world where GDPR existed. In the US, by the way, there's CCPA, California's privacy regulation, which is basically kind of an extension or a cousin of GDPR. We also maintain, SOC 2 Type 2 audits every year. We maintain ISO certifications. There's kind of these tiers of trust that need to exist. One of them is, do you trust Crossbeam from a core security infrastructure policies? Can we trust Crossbeam with our data perspective? That's the same question that you would ask of any SaaS tool, of any CRM system, of any marketing automation system. Can we allow Crossbeam to see this stuff? And that's actually a really easy checkbox, because we spend so much time and energy and effort on just the security and privacy posture of our own. But the question you're asking is a more important one, which is, do we trust our partners, really? And is the actual playbook and workflow that Crossbeam unlocks something that is going to pass muster with our legal teams, with our privacy teams, as it relates to sharing and collaborating with partners. So we've had hundreds and hundreds of legal teams at publicly traded companies like go over this stuff. And here's what they always find. One, the existing account mapping process is a major, major problem that needs to go away inside of these companies. And Crossbeam is an undoubted material improvement from that because of the amount of controls, auditing, logging, and just general level of implementation control that can exist inside these companies to have the policies about who sees what data under what circumstances match the policies that exist inside of
you actually help people to cleanse their data.
Yeah. Look, what's crazy is, it's not our number one persona, but we have had general counsels and we've had CISOs, chief information security officers, be the buyer of Crossbeam.
Yes.
Because they actually look at it as compliance software. Because you're going from, a good analogy is like, if you go from every single employee manages their own usernames and passwords to you sign up for something like Okta or like an SSO kind of like, single sign-on management platform. Yes, you're kind of putting all your eggs in one basket in one area. However, you are getting this one centralized universe of control where you can have your auditors go in, you can have your internal admin teams go in and know that you have a governance layer for how this data changes hands. Now, there's an embedded question in there, which is it okay for data to change hands at all? And that's every company's own legal question around what's in their partnership agreements. Very often companies have this direct controller to controller relationships that exist with partners where there is a very specific set of kind of terms and practices around what companies can do with the data that gets shared across company lines. Whether or not, for example, a big thing with GDPR is personally identifiable information. The cool thing about Crossbeam is it's all company data. It's not people data. So while you can choose to share contact information, if your governance within your partner relationship and the way that you handle personal privacy matters in your own policies may or may not allow for it, depending on your geography and other factors, you don't have to. And if you don't share any PII and you don't receive any PII, now we're talking about business level information, which is more like akin to trade secrets and just falls under a different class of management. But I'm not a lawyer. I'm not anybody's lawyer. And what I encourage folks to do is have their, do your due diligence on your privacy and security. The good news is 40,000 companies, including about 80% of the Bessemer Cloud Index at this point, has figured out that Crossbeam's okay after doing their work. And we're working on that other 20%. It ain't legal problems that's holding us back there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bob. It's really interesting. Earlier on, you also mentioned about some companies still sharing data via Excel spreadsheets, and believe me, it still exists. So what would your advice be for those companies who do not have Crossbeam in their partner stack? What are they missing on a high level? And
I think,
what would your suggestion be here?
So here's two things. So for one, I think kind of what I laid out earlier around the painkiller and the vitamin, right? So the painkiller of you're missing out on massive amounts of improved efficiency and security posture and scalability without needing to add additional headcount, et cetera, by automating account mapping and kind of moving that workflow into Crossbeam. It pays for itself instantaneously. And that's been validated so many times over. So you're missing out on that. You're missing out on that second party data layer, which means that your revenue team is missing out on understanding why your channel organization and your partner organization is adding more value than ever, especially in the AI era, around not just their own success, but the success of the company overall and the growth of the company, right? So those are big, big gaps. And I think you should think about Crossbeam as part of your AI stack effectively. And if your company cares about that and is investing in that, getting the Crossbeam MCP server connected up to your internal agents is just an absolute game changer from a data quality and data volume and data enrichment perspective. So there's all of that in terms of what folks are missing out on. Sorry, what was the second part of your question? You had a part two there.
The advice and recommendation, for those, because I'm part of the professional channel communities.
Yeah.
And I'm absolutely, in love with your product. Even though I've never used it, I said, Bob has to be on my show because I want to learn so much about Crossbeam. And you're such a visionary person. You mentioned about AI stack, right? So how do you think Crossbeam and the partner ecosystem will change over time? AI is changing our lives so rapidly.
Yeah.
What's your view on it?
So I answer this question not necessarily starting from partnerships, because I don't know that this change originates in partnerships and pushes outward. I think for better or worse, this change starts kind of in a much more horizontal way and kind of kind of happens to partnerships without an enormous amount of control emanating from the partnerships org, which is unfortunate, but I think also true of the overwhelming majority of roles and jobs to be done inside of companies in the AI. And that word horizontal is the very first thing that comes to mind, because I think what it's doing is it is lowering the barriers for people who do work, especially information work inside of companies, to be more horizontal in the scope of their roles and the jobs that they can do. So there's a history, which in complicated technical companies is not surprising, of deep specialization that exists. And when your company is 100 people, you might have one VP of partnerships. When you get to be 500 people, you might break that out into tech partners and channel partners. And then you get account managers, and you get partner marketers, and you get partner ops people, and you get all these deeper specializations. It's very similar when you look at, say, like a product and engineering organization, where you have product managers and you have software engineers, but you also have back end versus front end. And you also have people that specialize in quality assurance and code testing, and folks that specialize in DevOps and infrastructure and things like that. And we're seeing maybe a really good analogy for this very early on right now in that engineering world, which is, this is already happening thanks to AI and AI coding. Great product managers are starting to turn into front-end engineers. And like at our company, our product management team is in Claude Code inside of our code base, actually submitting pull requests that are good into our actual, folks that are not necessarily coders by trade. The top 20 or 30% of the lowest hanging fruit that exists in our product roadmap is actually addressable in a way that saves time and it's pretty efficient by folks without a deep coding background. And very similarly in the design world, our designers are kind of becoming product managers, and beyond doing individual pixel level work, they're actually designing full featured interactive prototypes thanks to prototyping tools, right? So it's taking everything and kind of pushing it into something that's a little more of a blob. It's pushing everybody a little bit to the right, right? If the full stack engineer is kind of to the right center in that diagram. So, and similarly within engineering, right? Like back-end folks who haven't done a lot of work in front-end frameworks suddenly are experts in Vue and React, and can kind of go a little farther without a consult or without adding another person to the project. And this is really, really, really good for productivity and speed and decreasing the amount of information exchange required to solve problems. And because of that, in a lot of companies, unfortunately, what you're seeing is a lot of decrease in headcount. And like we've seen this, depending on when this podcast airs, like a couple of weeks ago, Block cut 50% of their staff. Atlassian just did a big round of cuts, specifically citing AI. And I think as it relates to information work, that trend is going to continue. Absolutely. And what's not being said is that the people, maybe this is being said, but the people that are still there are just wildly more. So you end up in this world where the folks that figure out how to harness this stuff and make themselves more horizontally impactful inside of a company, not only do they create job security, not only do they advance their own technical skills and make themselves more marketable as employees in the future, but they become more valuable and probably increase their earning potential even within their own jobs. So, there's this incredibly unfortunate thing around a lot of folks losing their jobs in this era. Yeah. I think the thing that's, a very interesting artifact is that the people that are keeping their jobs are upskilling materially, increasing their earning potential, and potentially building more exciting, higher velocity careers than they would have in other circumstances. Like the consolidation down to a fewer number of seats that can do more things creates a lot more flexibility in terms of how those people can be rewarded. So it's really it's an unfortunate thing. You can get into, capitalism and, wealth consolidation and income inequality discussions and things like that. But technology always is and has been a forcing function on those factors, and AI is no different. So for folks inside of companies thinking about the AI era and like what's scary about it or where there's opportunities, I think I would ask the question, how can I make myself more horizontally relevant? And how can I lean on AI and AI upskilling in order to do that? Because that's what's going to happen, whether you bring it on yourself or whether it happens because it happens to you. The jobs to be done are going to be spread out among a fewer number of less specialized people. And I think that's coming for all of us. And that includes partner teams.
No, I think what you've just mentioned is very, very relevant. So, talking about the companies, it's not just Crossbeam you've launched, right? As you mentioned, you had other startups. Are you thinking of another, perhaps, platform, or you're just focusing on Crossbeam?
Crossbeam's too fun, honestly. So my first company was called RJ Metrics, and it was like charts and dashboards and kind of data analytics platform, mostly for e-commerce companies was our target market. And then my second company was called Stitch Data, and it was even nerdier than RJ Metrics. It was data infrastructure and cloud-based data pipelines, and we kind of sold into the modern data stack in the early days of that movement. And the thing, Crossbeam has so much that those companies didn't have. I love those companies and I love the teams and people there, and what I learned there was amazing. But Crossbeam's got network effects, which is so rare in B2B companies. Like, Crossbeam gets better the more people that are on it, even if the software stays the same. So like, if there's 5 people on Crossbeam, it's not a very good product, no matter how good the code is. If there's 5,000 people, it's a really good product. And if there's, we're going to probably cross 50,000 companies on it this year, it becomes like something that is incredibly like transformational in terms of the impact it has. So we get to do this thing from a marketing and growth perspective where the product's own success makes the product inherently better and therefore makes it more viral. And there's this constant like virtuous cycle. It's just so fun compared to a more classic traditional technology or software or SaaS business where you need to generate another lead by buying online ads or by having a viral blog post or by doing these really complicated like lead generation processes. So we get to kind of, have a lot of non-traditional customer acquisition strategies that are really fun at Crossbeam. So that's great. This is, I really love the people that we get to help and that we're around, and ecosystem-led growth movement that has kind of come about in the era of Crossbeam is one that I actually really deeply believe in. Fortunately, and maybe most importantly for still doing this in a couple of years, is that AI actually dovetails extremely nicely with Crossbeam because we're a data company and not a workflow company or a classic SaaS company. We're not just like a UI on top of a bunch of spreadsheets or databases. We really are a network effects driven data moat that helps our customers build their own data moats. And that's the most valuable thing in this AI era is proprietary access to data, agentic intelligence. And I think we're playing ball in that space in a way that's just going to grow over the next few years. And it just it would feel so foolish not to be building right now in this moment in time, in this era. And I think Crossbeam is a great platform on which to do it. So I'm still, I have no thoughts of a next one, and I'm still working on Crossbeam.
You're too busy with Crossbeam, exactly. And I consult a lot of startups on go-to-market strategy, and I think Crossbeam should be absolutely the defaulted platform any startup should be thinking of.
Yeah.
As we are wrapping up our discussion, Bob, is there anything you'd like to share with my audience, perhaps about your other passions you may have apart from technology, any hobbies or any books you may like, anything which is close to your heart?
Yeah, totally. I'll give you my favorite hobby, and then I can plug some media. My favorite hobby is actually improv comedy. I, in the middle of my career, spent 5 years on a professional improv comedy team in the Philadelphia area that performed over 100 shows in Philly at the Philly Improv Theater. We toured around to different comedy festivals in New York and Detroit. I did some training in Los Angeles at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater. So I find that improv is such a good complement to my day job, where half the time I have to be a very good listener and a quiet thinker and an analyzer. And then the other half of the time I have to do stuff like this and have conversations and have them not be overly boring on podcasts or all hands meetings or, public stages. And improv is a very interesting skill to have because you have to be listening and thinking extremely quickly. You can't miss anything, but you also have to be somewhat performative and be able to kind of empathize deeply with what the audience is seeing and what people are thinking and might want to hear or expect to hear out of any given conversation or scene. So doing a lot of that, getting 10,000 hours of improv, I think is good for any business professional that wants to, again, be more horizontal in what they do, right? I started out as my first company. I was like computer nerd in the basement, never talked to people, writing code 12 hours a day. Over the last 20 years, I've had to become more horizontal in what I'm able to do in order to be good in my field. And I think improv was actually a really great catalyst for some of that personal growth. So yeah, that's big. And then look, media-wise, I wrote a book last year called Ecosystem-Led Growth, published by Wiley. It was a national bestseller. You can get it on Amazon. It's available.
Got it. I read it. I read it.
Amazing.
I got
Oh,
it.
it's
I
great.
just need your autograph on it, but I got it. It's amazing. Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and yes, we'll have to meet up next time I'm in EMEA. I'll sign it for sure. And yeah, so that's still readily available. And the one other thing I'll plug. We just started at Crossbeam. Myself and our chief product officer, Lindsay DeFalco, are doing a podcast called The AI Ecosystem. And it's a podcast specifically about a lot of the things we talked about here today at the intersection of artificial intelligence and kind of go-to-market strategies, and specifically ecosystem-led growth. So many good discussions. We're staying on top of the latest news and things coming out, a couple times a month there. So,
Bob, I'd love to be your guest on your show. I love AI. I love it. Yeah, now let's do it. Let's connect for sure. It has been a great pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for this great discussion.
Thank you, Dinara. It's so great to spend some time with you. Cheers.